I'm going to speak to you like someone who doesn't have much time left. Not in a dramatic way, not for attention, just honestly. When you're young, you believe time is infinite. You assume you'll fix everything later. You assume you'll figure it out. And then one day you look up and realize most people don't fail because they lack intelligence. They fail because they repeat avoidable mistakes for too long. After a long life, here's what becomes obvious. Success isn't complicated, it's just hard. Everyone wants the shortcut. They want the secret stock, the perfect business idea, the one trick that makes everything easier. But there is no shortcut. There are only principles, simple principles that work, precisely because most people refuse to follow them. They're boring, they're slow, they require patience, and patience is the rarest skill on earth. What I wish I understood earlier is this. Your future is not built by big moments. It's built by small decisions repeated for years. What you buy, what you ignore, who you listen to, what you say no to, how you behave when you're scared, how you behave when you're excited. Most people think wealth is about being smart. It isn't. I've met brilliant people who were broke, not because they were unlucky, because their behavior was unstable. Intelligence is like horsepower in a car. If you don't know where you're going, more horsepower just helps you crash faster. What matters isn't how smart you are. What matters is how you think. And, more importantly, what you refuse to do. The biggest wins in life are not about what you chase, they're about what you avoid. Avoiding obvious traps, avoiding ego, avoiding the need to impress people who don't matter, avoiding the games designed to make you emotional and impulsive. That's what calm wealth is about, not getting rich fast, getting calm over time. Before we go further, let me ask you something. Write in the comments where you're watching from and how old you are. Not for me, for you. There's something grounding about seeing your age written in your own words before you hear what comes next. When I was your age, I thought being smart meant having all the answers. Now I know being smart means something else. It means knowing which questions not to ask, which games not to play, which temptations to ignore. Because the most important decisions in life aren't about what you do, they're about what you refuse to do. I made this a personal rule. Avoid standard ways of failing. That's it. That's the cheat code, if you can call it a cheat code. Show me how people go bankrupt, and I'll structure my life to never repeat it. Show me how investors lose everything, and I'll build a system that makes it hard for me to behave that way. Most people spend their lives trying to find winners, but winners are rare, and they're unpredictable. Avoiding losers is easier, and it's usually enough. Avoiding debt that turns your life into a monthly emergency. Avoiding easy money stories that rely on perfect timing. Avoiding partners you don't trust. Avoiding lifestyles that require everything to go right. You don't need genius to win a long game. You need to stop stepping on the same rakes everyone else steps on. And here's the part people miss. You don't have to learn all this by getting hurt. You can learn it by paying attention. Most mistakes are not unique. They're patterns. Ego, impatience, comparison, overconfidence. The same forces have destroyed fortunes for hundreds of years. Different decade, different technology, same human behavior. So if you want one practical habit that changes your life, study failure. On purpose. Not to become negative, to become harder to fool. Because once you see the pattern, you stop being surprised by it. And when you stop being surprised, you stop making desperate decisions. Now, the second thing I wish I had learned earlier is the thing almost nobody learns early enough. It sounds boring, but it has made more money, more careers, more lives than any brilliant insight ever has. Patience. The big money isn't in the buying. It isn't in the selling. It's in the waiting. Waiting is painful when you're young, ambitious, and surrounded by noise. Everyone looks like they're moving. Everyone looks like they're winning. And doing nothing feels like falling behind. I remember watching opportunities I passed on turn into gold for other people. It bothered me. It ate at me. And then I learned something that calmed me down for good. For every one missed opportunity that worked out, there were many more that blew up. You just don't hear about those. Nobody brags about the disasters they barely escaped or the money they lost chasing excitement. Patience is not laziness. Patience is discipline. It's choosing a long timeline and refusing to be bullied by short-term emotions. And it compounds, just like money, just like knowledge. The longer you practice patience, the easier it becomes, the more it pays. So if I could go back and tell my younger self one thing, it would be this. Whatever you think your timeline is, triple it. Want to make it in 5 years? Plan for 15. Want to build wealth quickly? Define quickly as decades, not months. Because real compounding, life-changing compounding, doesn't happen fast. And here's the cruel irony. When you're young, you have time, but you don't have patience. When you finally learn patience, you're running out of time. So learn it now. Sit on your hands. Stop reacting. Stop confusing motion with progress. Let time work for you instead of against you. And once you understand patience, the next lesson becomes obvious. Money isn't about earning more. It's about needing less. And that's where most people get trapped, quietly, without realizing it. Money isn't about earning more. It's about needing less. Most people have it completely backwards. They think the solution to every financial problem is a bigger income. And yes, income helps. But income without restraint just builds a bigger cage. I've watched people double their income and stay just as stressed. Because their lifestyle doubled with it. A bigger house, more maintenance, more obligations, a nicer car, a new payment, more pressure, more standards, more normal expenses, more noise. And then they wonder why they still feel trapped. Here's what I learned late and wish I learned early. Past a certain point, more money doesn't buy more happiness. It buys more complexity, more decisions, more people wanting something from you, more things that can break, more reasons to worry. The real secret isn't getting to more. It's figuring out what enough looks like and then refusing to let your ego move the goalposts. Because the moment your spending rises to meet your income, you're back where you started, just on a faster treadmill. And treadmills are exhausting. So let me give you a rule that actually works. Live below your means, not at your means, below. That gap between what you earn and what you spend, that's not leftover money. That's where freedom lives. That's where patience lives. That's where you make calm decisions instead of desperate ones. When you have breathing room, you stop making choices out of fear. You stop reacting to every small problem like it's an emergency. You stop needing the world to cooperate for your life to function. And that's what most people are really chasing anyway. Not a bigger number, a calmer life. So ask yourself one honest question. If your income stayed exactly the same for the next 5 years, would you be okay? If the answer is no, that's not a reason to panic. It's just a signal. It means you built a life that requires constant growth to survive. And that's a fragile way to live. Calm wealth is the opposite. Calm wealth is building a life that still works when things don't go perfectly. And once you understand that, the next principle becomes obvious. You don't stay calm by accident. You stay calm by never stopping learning. You don't stay calm by accident. You stay calm by never stopping learning. Most people think learning is for the first part of life, school, college, training. Then you graduate into work and routine. That's one of the biggest mistakes adults make, because the world keeps changing whether you keep up or not. Markets change, industries change, people change. And if your thinking stays the same for 10 years, you don't become stable, you become outdated. What I wish I understood earlier is that learning compounds, just like money. A small amount of learning, done consistently, becomes unfair over time. Not because you become a genius, but because you become harder to fool, harder to manipulate, harder to scare, harder to seduce with a story. That's the real edge. And here's another thing I learned too late. It's not enough to learn one subject deeply. If you only understand one lane, finance, tech, real estate, whatever, you'll eventually make a mistake because life doesn't stay in one lane. The best thinkers I met weren't narrow specialists. They built a simple toolbox of mental models. They understood a little psychology, a little history, a little economics, a little incentives, a little human nature. Because the biggest mistakes people make with money are rarely mathematical. They're behavioral. People don't lose money because they can't calculate. They lose money because they get greedy, scared, proud, or impatient. So if you want a calm wealth approach to learning, it looks like this. Every week, read something that strengthens your judgment. Not news, not drama, not endless opinions. Something that makes your thinking clearer. Read about how bubbles form, how incentives distort decisions, how businesses actually make money, how people rationalize bad behavior. And if you want the fastest learning shortcut, this is it. Study mistakes. Not just your own, everyone's. Because a lot of wisdom is simply pattern recognition. You see the same trap in different clothing, and once you can see it, you stop stepping into it. Here's a simple practice that takes 10 minutes. When you make a financial decision, any meaningful one, write down 3 things. What I believe is true. What could prove me wrong? What I will do if I'm wrong. That's it. It doesn't make you perfect. It makes you prepared. And preparedness is what keeps people calm when things get chaotic. Now, this connects to something else I wish I understood earlier. Your life will include mistakes. It has to. But the goal is not to avoid mistakes entirely. The goal is to avoid the mistakes that are irreversible. Which brings me to the principle that saved me more pain than anything else. Protect your downside first. Protect your downside first. This is the part nobody wants to hear because it's not exciting. People want upside. They want speed. They want the story where everything changes in a year. But after a long life, you learn a simple truth. You don't win the long game by chasing upside. You win it by surviving. And survival is mostly about avoiding decisions that can permanently damage you. Think of life like a bridge. Small mistakes are scratches. Big mistakes are cracks. But some mistakes, they remove the supports. They don't just slow you down, they end the game. So the goal is to build a life where bad years are survivable, where one shock doesn't force you into panic, where one wrong bet doesn't erase 20 years of effort. That is calm wealth. And that's why I became almost boring about certain rules. Here are a few downside rules I wish I wrote on the wall earlier. First, be careful with leverage. Leverage makes good outcomes look brilliant until it turns against you. Debt is leverage. Margin is leverage. A lifestyle that requires constant high income is leverage. Leverage doesn't kill you in good times. It kills you when timing is bad. And timing is always bad eventually. Second, don't co-sign. Not because you don't love people, because love and contracts don't mix. You can support someone without attaching your financial life to their behavior. If they miss payments, it's not their credit that suffers first, it's yours. That's not kindness, that's fragility. Third, don't confuse confidence with risk. A confidence story is still a story. If the plan only works when everything goes right, it's not a plan, it's a wish. And wishes don't compound. Fourth, keep a buffer, always. Cash isn't exciting, but cash keeps you from selling at the worst moment. It keeps you from borrowing under pressure. It keeps you from turning a temporary problem into a permanent one. Most people think cash is wasted money. That's because they've never been through real stress. When stress hits, cash becomes oxygen. And here's the final downside rule, maybe the most important. Never make permanent decisions in temporary emotions. Fear makes you sell low. Euphoria makes you buy high. Embarrassment makes you hide problems instead of fixing them. So build your life so you don't have to decide under pressure. Write rules in calm times. Automate what you can. Simplify what you must. Because the goal isn't to be right every time. The goal is to still be standing after the storm. Now, once you protect your downside, your life becomes quieter. And when life gets quieter, you start noticing something people ignore for too long. Your relationships and your reputation are also assets, and they compound too. Your relationships and your reputation are also assets, and they compound too. When you're young, you think life is mostly about talent, skill, hustle, ambition. Those things matter, but over a long enough timeline, what determines your quality of life is simpler. Who you spend time with, who you trust, who trusts you. Because money is not the only thing that makes life calm. People do. Good relationships reduce risk. Bad relationships multiply it. I've watched people build wealth and lose peace because they surrounded themselves with drama, ego, and instability. And I've watched people with less money live calmer lives because their environment was healthy. So, if I could go back and speak to myself earlier, I'd say this: be ruthless about your environment. Not in a cold way, in a protective way. If you spend time with people who constantly complain, constantly panic, constantly chase status, that becomes your default. You start making emotional decisions because it's normal in your circle. But if you spend time with people who are steady, who plan, who think long-term, who don't need to impress anyone, your nervous system changes, your choices change. And one more thing: choose people with strong character. Talent is common. Character is rare. Work with people who do what they say, who tell the truth when it's uncomfortable, who don't change their principles under pressure. Because the biggest risk in money isn't the market, it's people. Bad partners, bad advisors, bad incentives. This is where reputation becomes quietly powerful. Your reputation is an asset you carry everywhere. You can't buy it quickly. You build it slowly. And once you have it, it opens doors that money can't force open. So protect it. Never trade your reputation for a short-term win. Never lie to make a deal work. Never do something just this once that you wouldn't want publicly known. Because one small ethical shortcut can cost you 10 years of trust. And trust, once lost, is expensive to rebuild. Now, this connects directly to money. People think wealth is about what you earn. But a lot of wealth is about what you keep, and what you avoid losing through bad decisions, bad relationships, and bad incentives. That's why the older you get, the more you value calm. Calm isn't laziness. Calm is clarity. And clarity lets you do the last thing that actually builds durable wealth. You keep doing the boring things long after everyone else quits. So let's bring this home. If you only remember a few things from this video, remember these. Avoid standard ways of failing. Be patient. Need less. Keep learning. Protect your downside. Choose your environment carefully. Guard your reputation like it's money, because it is. Now, I promised I wouldn't leave you with philosophy only, so here are 3 things to do in the next 7 days. First, simplify your money to 1 page. List your income, your fixed costs, your debts, your savings rate, your investments. 1 page. If it can't fit on 1 page, it's too complicated. Second, increase one automatic contribution, even by 1%. Your future doesn't change because of motivation, it changes because of automatic systems. Third, write down one mistake you will stop repeating. Just one. The one you know is costing you the most. Debt, impulse spending, chasing excitement, ignoring your health, whatever it is. Write it down and make one action that proves it. Cancel the subscription. Sell the expensive car. Pay off the highest rate debt. Set the contribution. Schedule the appointment. Do one real thing. Because most people don't need more information. They need a moment of honesty, followed by a small, irreversible action. If you want more calm wealth conversations like this, calm, direct, practical, subscribe. And leave a comment with your age and city, and one principle from today that you're actually going to use. Not the one you agree with, the one you'll apply. Calm, boring, effective. That's how wealth is built.